Welcome, I'm Deborah and this is Wendy, and we are living Lēla, which is home to Soulful Conceptions, the complete mind-body fertility program. So today we are going to talk to you about your psoas muscles and how they relate to your fertility. All right, so the first thing I want to share with you is the idea of what's called an anatomy train. And really it's bigger than just muscles. I'm going to use muscles as an example, but really it's about the whole body being integrated, muscles, nerves, hormones, chemical, neurotransmitters, all of that kind of stuff. But the anatomy trains is kind of an easy way to understand this integration. So when I first learned anatomy trains when I was a young yoga teacher, it was one of the coolest things actually that I learned about. So when they used to do dissections, right, when they were starting to study the body, a lot of times they would like push away all the other tissue to get to the muscles. They were interested like in a single muscle at a time. But what they realized was if they left your fascia intact, so your fascia is connective tissue. It's kind of like, if you think about it, like almost like that spider web or white sort of looking tissue when you see a piece of meat. So basically, if you kept the fascia intact, that you would get these whole trains of muscles that were connected to one another. So for example, or before I give you an example, I want you to think of the metaphor of like a sausage link, right? So the meat inside the sausage itself is your muscle, and then the casing are these anatomy trains made up by your connective tissue. So there's several major anatomy trains in the body, some more smaller ones. But for example, your front body train starts at the center of your foot, and it actually goes up the front of your leg, up your torso, and ends about here at the back of your head. And then the one that goes up the back body starts in the center of the foot, goes up the back of your leg, up your back, and ends at your forehead. So the idea is that if you had issues, let's say with your hamstrings being tight, you may not just feel it there in your body, you may have issues in your calf or in your back or somewhere else, because again, the whole body is connected in these anatomy trains. So we're going to specifically talk about the one related to the psoas and how that's related to fertility, because again, it's all about this integration that's happening in the body and how one thing can really affect it a lot. So Wendy, tell them about the psoas.
So the psoas, I geek out on the psoas, I just love it so much, but they are a pair of muscles, and they are one of the largest muscles in the body. Anatomically or mechanically, they attach starting at the back spine, like towards your lower thoracic, and attach down onto all of your lumbar, and then begin to attach onto your hip. They cut through the center of the body and attach, basically ending at the inner thigh. So they create actually this big triangular shape, which is sacred geometry, which also is something we teach about in our fertility program. Tension in the psoas anywhere along the anatomy train can be a contributor to low back pain, neck pain, hip pain. It's been known to mimic a stomach ulcer, which is really insane. Mm-hmm. And it's been linked to infertility because it can bear down on the nerves that move into the reproductive area. It's a part of our nervous system. It's connected to our nervous system. So to quote Liz Cook, who is a brilliant author and teacher of the psoas, she's been studying the psoas herself for 40 years, she explains that the psoas muscles are the messenger of the nervous system. So they are the messenger of integrity. They're really kind of primal, connected to the reptilian brain. They are intelligent and instinctive tissue, actually. So they actually have intelligence, and many layers of our body are layers of intelligence for sure. They track fear because they are connected to the sympathetic nervous system, which I wanted to kind of throw it back at you so that you could explain more about the sympathetic versus parasympathetic.
Yeah, so sympathetic nervous system is usually, most people think about it as your fight or flight response in the body, right? So it has a purpose. We've had it for about 100,000 years, at least we know. It's helped us to survive. And so when we think that we're in danger, our body kicks into the sympathetic nervous system. So when it goes into that response, heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, muscles get tight, particularly in the core, including the psoas. Blood flows away from anything that's non-essential, so digestion, reproduction, all of those things, to get you ready to either stay and fight or run and get the heck out of there, right? And so it's great if you really have to survive and do it. You want it to sort of turn off and then turn off when you're done, and then go back to your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the relaxation response in the body, or rest and digest, or we like to call it rest and digest and reproduce. So we're really kind of meant to be there most of the time. And so when we're in that part of our nervous system, our blood is flowing freely to our fingers and our toes, our muscles are relaxed, our heart rate and blood pressure are good, digestion is good, reproduction's online. So that's basically, in a nutshell, your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems.
Yeah. So, and then, it's really about, as you were saying, like when we go into fight or flight, it's about survival. And so you can imagine that if our psoas is in this state of tension a lot of the time, that we're kind of in that mode of like, get ready to run or tracking fear, and it's not really conducive to reproduction. And we're more interested about how we can kind of step away from just being in the mode of survival into more of the thriving, kind of flourishing aspect of what we're really meant to do as human beings, which is to thrive.
Right. And again, fight or flight initially was more literally about surviving, right? Like, I have to run away so I'm not eaten, or I got to catch something so I don't starve and die. The problem in modern day life is that we are perceiving that we're in danger even if we're not in danger of survival, right? We're running late in traffic, we have a report that's due and we don't have enough time to write it, like that kind of stuff. So we're in fight or flight a lot, even though we may not always realize it. So.
It's true. So today we wanted to just show you a really simple, elemental way to begin to start to release your psoas. So I'm going to use Deborah as kind of my model here, and she's going to lay down on the mat or the floor. So if you're doing this with us at home, you don't have to have a mat. It's going to be really simple. So as she lays herself down on the floor, allow your feet to become wider than your hips so that your knees are tipping in and resting upon one another. And you can kind of play with this on your own to see what that width is for you. And then I'm just going to give her a little bit of space here. So usually in our yoga practices, we're talking about conscious breathing. But today I want to talk about more of the notion of being breathed. I mean, we're always breathing. The breathing is happening, right? And what's beautiful about it is automatic. Thank God that we don't have to think about it. Every breath, breathe, take a breath, exhale.
While you're sleeping, you don't have to think about it.
Right. But it's also something that we can control, and we have some really powerful breathing techniques that we teach. But this idea that we can just be, that we can begin to notice our natural breath, to notice the natural rise and fall of our body as we breathe. And this idea that we're being breathed, that it's almost like if you were floating in a pool of water, there's this kind of natural like movement that's happening. I mean, the water's moving, but you're floating, and there's an expansive and kind of contractive quality to the movement of our body. And so it's probably hard to kind of see on this video the detail I'm seeing on Deborah, which is that when she takes a breath in, her body is expanding. And her low back is even arching just a touch off the floor. And then as she exhales, the breath is moving out of the body and the body is contracting. And in regards to this starting to release your psoas, just the shape that we're in right now, the fact that we're on the floor, you can start to kind of let the earth support you, this sense of the earth is rising up to meet you, that you can release the weight of your body to her idea of really starting to let go. We're slowing down. We're beginning to sense and notice what's happening in the body. And the shape of the legs, with the knees coming in and kind of tipping into one another, is starting to release the psoas at this lower kind of portion here, kind of hollowing the groin area. And for some people, just being here is hard because we're not doing anything. But this is part of the work. This is part of that deeper kind of like pulling the layers back and allowing ourselves to find the state of receptivity, which is an important aspect on the fertility journey. And the space of trust, trusting our body, trusting that the earth is going to hold us and that we can just ground upon her. And certainly there are stretches we can do to stretch the psoas, and we teach some of that in our program and in our yoga practices, that can release low back pain and can help our fertility, just to make sure like the lines of energy are more open. But it's also, this work is about nourishment. It's about balance. It's about grounding. It's about digesting, in a way, what life is bringing through to us and assimilating that and really finding integration, which Deborah talked about earlier. So take another couple of breaths here. Just really letting your body just be heavy, being held. And then when you're ready, if you're doing this with us at home, and Deborah, when you're ready, start to just kind of maybe wiggle your fingers, maybe wiggle your toes. Start to allow your eyes to open to a soft gaze. And take your time. When you're ready, you'll roll to one side and just softly press yourself up to sitting.
Do I have to get up?
Yeah, it's like, darn, now I have to get up.
And it's really amazing just what even a few minutes of this can do in terms of shifting your whole state of being. So it doesn't have to be, always just you make a whole hour to go to the yoga studio or whatever serves you, for relaxation.
Yeah, sometimes it's just that simple. So we invite you to just start to sense and notice this a little bit more, and there's more of this to come. Our program does touch upon this some, for sure, and there's more to come. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Namaste.
Namaste.